Hey, I'm Hank, and this is Herd of Turtles, where I look back on the original black and white Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comic books, which were written and drawn by the Turtles' creators, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. Today, I'm looking at issue number 3, which came out in March of 1985 when I would have been 6 years old. Still a good 3 or 4 years before I'd discovered the Turtles for myself. These issues don't have any titles, though the story was retroactively named The Great Chase. Issue 3 starts up pretty close to where number 2 ended. The story opens with the Turtles helping April out of the sewers, straight out from having defeated Baxter Stockman and his Mousers in Stockman's underground lab. The Turtles express some concern that when the cops come looking to see what Baxter Stockman was up to, there's an increased chance that the Turtles' home will be discovered. They realize that they may have to consider moving to a new home, but wish to consult with Master Splinter before making any big decisions. April gives the guys her phone number and says that if they need any help, they should call. The guys return home, and it's a disaster. The place has been trashed, and there's broken Mousers and blood on the floor, and Master Splinter is gone. Leo tries to keep the guys calm and puts them to work, bundling up whatever they can salvage so they can get moving. Raph, being Raph, freaks out angrily and storms off, saying that he's going to look for Splinter. Leo shouts for Raph to be back in 10 minutes, but a little while later, Mikey, Donnie, and Leo are hanging out in an alley, waiting on Raph, who is, of course, late. Eventually, he shows up, and Leo gives Raph shit for taking off, and Raph accepts that he was wrong. That's the thing we'll see about Raphael. In the moment, he's always oblivious to the feelings of others, but after the fact, he can clearly see where he was wrong. The guys give April a call and ask if she can come pick them up, and she says she's got a van. That's pretty lucky. Imagine if April just had a little car or a bike. The Turtles are hiding out in an alley at 328 Hudson Street, which is in Lower Manhattan, just a few blocks south of Washington Square Park. April picks up the guys in her VW van. I can't be sure, but I want to assume that the van we see in this issue is the inspiration for what eventually becomes the Ninja Turtles' party wagon. In the cartoon, the van that becomes the party wagon previously belonged to Baxter Stockman, who in this comic is April's former boss, so there is a connection. April asks after Splinter, and when she hears he's missing and might be dead, she has a strong emotional response and promises to help the Turtles however she can. And it's at this exact moment that the real action of this issue kicks off. A couple of cops mistake April's van for a van that's being used as a getaway vehicle in a robbery that was just committed. So the cops hit their lights and try to pull April over. But of course, April can't pull over because she's got a van full of mutant turtles. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen The Blues Brothers, but it's one of my favorite movies, and it's a musical comedy starring John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd that came out back in 1980, and it had a series of increasingly ridiculous car crashes involving piles of police cruisers getting smashed together at high speeds. Kevin Eastman himself has noted in the Ninja Turtle autobiography that the Blues Brothers movie was indeed a big influence on this issue. In my opinion, this right here is also where we get the start of really seeing who Mikey is. Despite the serious nature of what's going on, despite how upset his brothers are about Splinter having gone missing, when Leo tells Mikey to lean out the back of the van to grab their license plate before the cops can get it, Mikey's response is to grin wildly saying, "Yahoo, this is great, just like Hill Street." That's a reference to Hill Street Blues, an American cop drama that was on TV back in the 1980s. As Mikey takes the plate off the back of the van, we can see that he's still grinning. It's just a little moment, but to me it's right here. This is where we first start to see that Mikey is the fun one. April dodges the first cop car, and Leo, at least I assume it's Leo, sitting up front with April, he says, "Move over, Richard Petty." Richard Petty was a champion race car driver who won the NASCAR championship 7 times, with most of his accomplishments happening in the 1960s and 70s. Honestly, as a kid, I think I always thought they were talking about Richard Pryor. Another cop car comes out of nowhere, and to avoid it, April swerves through a park. She's driving as fast as she can while trying not to hit anybody. Meanwhile, one of the cops in the car that's chasing her is telling his partner that he thinks he can shoot out her tires. "What? Don't shoot, you fool! What do you think this is, the A-team? There's too many citizens around. You'd probably hit somebody," says the other cop. "I pity the man." Pop culture references. You want 'em? This book's got 'em. A few other choice lines. "Holy hippo spit!" "Oh, Ralphie, my new dress." The cop car crashes in the park, but two more take up the chase. April nudges one, and it goes flying through the window of a paint shop. April is upset about all the damage and harm being done, but Leo says that he thinks the cops are okay and reminds her that they did nothing wrong and the cops started this, which is an awesomely anti-authority way of seeing things. By sheer coincidence, April happens to drive right past the very same van which she'd been mistaken for, the van being driven by the robbers. April makes a hard turn, escaping down a side street as the other van tips over in the middle of the road. The cops descend on the tipped-over van, even as April and the Turtles get away, and we get a big splash page of all the cops aiming their guns at the robbers in a scene that is, again, straight out of the Blues Brothers. This is followed by another splash page, this one of April and the Turtles driving down a quiet but active New York street. A street sign says 28th Ave, so I guess April was driving north after she picked up the guys on Hudson Street? April takes the guys back to her place where she lives alone above an old junk shop which her father used to run. The idea of being able to afford a place like this in modern New York City is pretty much unthinkable. April's family shop is called Second Time Around. And I guess her owning a van kind of makes sense, as a second-hand store could use a van for picking up or delivering large items. April notes sadly that she lives alone in the place, now that her father is in assisted living due to his senile dementia. Leo says that he can relate, as their father is gone as well. The guys entirely invade April's place, not that she minds. Mikey specifically spreads out across the couch, which seems cute, but when I look at it now, all I can think about is, wasn't he just literally crawling around in the sewers? He didn't have a shower or anything, and now he's getting whatever filth is on him and his shell all over April's couch. It's really gross when you think about it. The guys say they're just going to rest for a bit, maybe have a bite to eat, and then start looking for Master Splinter. April offers to get them a drink, and that's where we get Raphael asking if she's got any beer. It's another little moment that I think really informs you a lot about the characters. Superman and Spider-Man don't kick ass and then ask for a beer. Maybe in the real world they would. Despite being, well, mutant Ninja Turtles, to me, the guys somehow always felt more authentic and realistic than other comic book characters, and it's because of little moments like that one. So Raph and the rest of the Turtles pass out, Raph on the floor behind the couch, and the last page of the story is just April talking to herself, recounting the wildness of the day's events as she lays out some blankets on the brothers. Raphael, what a lug. And then we get our epilogue, which has Master Splinter lost and badly injured in the sewers, recalling the events that led him to his current situation. It's revealed that while the Turtles and April were out stopping Baxter Stockman, Mousers broke into the Turtles' home and attacked Splinter. He defended himself, but was injured in the process and forced to flee. We see Splinter here, not as the aged and dignified master that he'd previously been presented as. Instead, he's fighting for his life, sometimes slightly glib, sometimes just desperate to survive. Eventually, the Mousers overwhelm Splinter, and he's about to be torn apart when the Mousers all turn away and retreat off the way they'd come. Obviously, we know that this is when Baxter Stockman activated the self-destruct protocol back in issue 2, calling all the Mousers back to his lab to destroy it and the Turtles within it. So without even knowing it, by letting Baxter set off the destruct system, the Turtles saved their master's life. Now fully in the present, Splinter is just barely clinging to life, and this is when he's discovered by two maintenance workers. Though, they seem a little odd. Their voices aren't normal, we can tell by the font they speak in, and they seem to be carrying some advanced equipment. While they're shocked at the size of Splinter, they assume he's just a large, injured rat, and they're about to put him out of his misery when Splinter cries out, "No, please don't shoot," and then passes out. The maintenance workers, amazed by the large, talking rodent, take it away. And after administering some medical care, eventually Splinter wakes up in a hospital bed. He's readying himself to escape when he walks past an open doorway. Splinter cries out, "By the souls of my ancestors!" And then we see what he's seeing. That the maintenance workers are really robots being controlled by tiny little aliens who ride about in the mid-sections of the robots. And that's where the issue ends. This is a unique issue. There's not really any fights, and the whole thing is basically a big car chase set on and off the streets of 1980s New York. Now here's the thing about me. I got into the Ninja Turtle comics when I was 9 or 10 years old, right as I was moving out into a little shack in the woods in the northern interior of British Columbia. And I hated it out there. No electricity, no running water, deep in the woods, doing chores, walking 2 miles down an old logging road just to get to where the school bus would pick me up. I hated it. It was more than rural. It was the middle of goddamn nowhere. Nothing around me for miles in every direction but untouched Canadian woodland. So for me, at that time, in that place, this comic about 1980s New York City was everything. It was where I wanted to be. And sure, New York City had been showing up in Marvel Comics for years, but the New York in the Ninja Turtles was so intense. It was full of graffiti and grit and bars and weird punks and lowlifes and dirtbags. The streets were cracked, there was litter all over the sidewalks, and everybody looked like they were hustling to get by. I loved it. I still do. I recognize that it wouldn't be a blast to go back and live in the 1980s, but man, it sure is easy to romanticize when I look over these pages. I want to be there. I want to live that life. Think about it. The Warriors came out in 1979. This is that New York. I think this is a big part of what drew me into the Turtles as a series. The stories aren't formulaic in any way. There's no set pattern. It's not like in every issue of the Ninja Turtles you get a fight and a lecture from Splinter, and each turtle gets to say his in-character line of dialogue. It's much more like real life, where there isn't a coherent plot, so much as life is just a series of events that simply keep happening. I'd like to go back to this shot of the cop car flying through the paint window. I'm always really struck whenever I see this page, thinking about how much work clearly went into it. I guess they're pretty easy to draw, but there's just so many little pieces of broken glass. So that's issue number 3, The Great Chase. A fine issue, full of adventure and fun. Well, that's it for this installment. Next episode, I'll be looking at Raphael number 1. I'm Hank, and this has been Herd of Turtles. And now you have. Got any beer? This has been a Death by Media Man production. For more Death by Media Man content, check us out on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. If you dig what we did, feel free to leave us a like or a comment and share this link with your friends. And if you'd like to support us with some of your money, we got a Patreon as well. Thanks so much for listening, and remember... crap, I forgot what I was going to tell you to remember. Well, anyways, thanks for listening. You're awesome.